Dear viewer, I want to ask you a question. What kind of Fallout fan are you? And please answer honestly, because truthfully I tell you that your response will be factored in to your psychological evaluation.
You're kind of nervous when I take tests.
Yeah, don't care. Didn't ask. Okay, let's begin. Are you this kind of Fallout fan?
Type of guy who will never settle down. Where pretty girls are, well, you know that I'm around. I kiss them and I love them, cause to me they're all the same. I hug them and I squeeze them, they don't even know my name. They call me the Wanderer, yeah, the Wanderer. I roam around. Oh, well, there's Flo on my left arm and there's Mary on my right.
Or are you this kind of Fallout fan? If you're the latter, congrats, you're a fellow schizo, and you're invited to my next treehouse meeting. If you're the former, don't worry, there's still hope for you. Consider this video your initiation into the Cool Kids Club. Hazing included, free of charge.
They're just questions, Leon.
Okay, settle down. I can see you quaking in your little gaming chair, fuming at the ears, clutching your favorite Fallout 4 Funko Pop, appalled that I would ask such a loaded question. And, well, you're right. Maybe I shouldn't be interrogating my audience, especially on this highly sensitive subject. We're all Fallout fans, after all.
There's some kind of misunderstanding here.
What?
We're Fallout fans, okay?
Okay. Well, what kind of Fallout fan are you?
I really should be more careful with this topic, given the recent skirmishes the Fallout community has endured in this never-ending civil war of opinions. These are simply questions designed to trigger an emotional response, to showcase the stark dichotomy of the Fallout fanbase. Truth is, Fallout's artistic direction, core anti-war message, and horror roots have been lost. If the later Fallout games have transformed into light-hearted FPS games, which half of the time play like glorified Sims games, set on the backdrop of a post-apocalypse obsessed with the 1950s, a fun jaunt through the wasteland, if you will, then classic Fallout is a dark, post-apocalyptic horror game set in the decayed carcass of a retro futuristic dystopia. A true horror. So join me on this cold and rainy night as we explore the horror of classic Fallout with your hosts, Ram and the Lamb.
Now, Jim Boyd, Susan Burke, and Bob Copeland, bringing a world of news to New England. This is News Center 5 Eye Opener.
Fallout released in an interesting time of American history. The 90s is widely considered as the tail end of the Cold War, with the fall of the Soviet Union. The Cold War spanned several decades, arguably starting at the creation of the atomic bomb in Los Alamos, New Mexico, a time period fraught with political tension, propaganda, paranoia.
But when a wartime nuclear explosion occurs, a serious fallout follows. Thousands of tons of atomized earth, building materials, rocks, and gases may be thrown into the air.
And the very real threat that at the drop of a hat, your friends, family, and all the loved ones of your loved ones of your loved ones will all simultaneously burn together in an atomic holocaust, leaving the soil rotten and decayed, where no life will ever recover or can ever recover. and electric. The Cold War produced some of my favorite pieces of media, ranging from music, movies, and art, which would later directly influence the Fallout games. The Cold War and near-apocalyptic disasters, such as the Cuban Missile Crisis and the Chernobyl nuclear disaster, were not distant events that people living in the 90s could simply disassociate from. And, well, let's be honest, we're not exactly out of the woods just yet.
Without warning.
Atomic Holocaust!
American media of the 90s was still very interested in dealing with the collective emotions of dread and paranoia from the remaining residue of the Cold War. And Fallout was no different. Through music, we characterize memories and emotions. For example, a memory of a place. Let's say your childhood home. The emotions you and others felt there, the memories you and others had, good and bad. The physical place represents these aspects of ourselves. So then how, on God's green earth, do you characterize a world that has suffered nuclear holocaust? A world in which the very air that you breathe penetrates you with invisible rays of entropy and death. And the very soil you step on is littered with the ashes of fellow people who all burn together in a mass extinction. Well, if you ask Mark Morgan, you let the dead speak for themselves. The approach to Fallout's soundtrack was a unique one for the time, and despite Fallout releasing decades ago at this point, I still rarely see this approach in games. A typical soundtrack, while not necessarily translated well to an album format, can still be listened to in isolation. But Fallout's soundtrack is not conventional in this way. The only albums you're going to find that give you a similar experience to the Fallout OST are found in the dark, dingy basement of your buddy Tim at work, who listens to 5-hour loops of nails on chalkboard for fun on the company's speakers. You listen to bands? Songs with rhythmic meter? Lyrics? I spit on you, insolent, uncultured scum. I am a man of refined taste. I listen to hyper-niche edits of Everywhere at the End of Time on repeat at work, to the utter dismay of my coworkers. They simply can't comprehend the genius of auditory symphony. They must be shown the way by force. Sorry guys. Had a bit of an episode there. I promise to get back on my meds. But anyways...
Anyway? What do you mean, anyway?
Tim Kaine in his Dev Diaries has listed various ambient artists, such as Aphex Twin, Brian Eno, and Synesthesia, even drawing inspiration from industrial electronic artists such as Scorn, Techno Animal, and even Depeche Mode, funnily enough. Mark Morgan took inspiration from these artists and created not a piece of music to be put over the world as a supplemental piece, but rather, he transcribed the sounds of a long decayed world. What I really appreciate about this soundtrack is that Mark not only managed to capture the soundscape of the wasteland in its literal form, but the soundscapes also capture the dark meaning behind the wasteland. Literally speaking, I'm sure the track Desert Wind is depicting just that, desert wind. But when I listen to the track, I can't help but experience a form of auditory pareidolia. When I hear the howls of the unforgiving desert wind, I hear the anguished cries of the millions of people who lost their lives in the Southern California desert on that fateful fall of 2077.
This is an emergency alert system message. This is not a drill. A nuclear attack has been detected in your area. Seek immediate shelter in the nearest available facility.
The souls of the damned, haunting the very fallout you breathe, that you step on, that you build your town on. Almost as if their souls have become one in the radiation itself, in unity.
This will be the age of mutants. Unity. Control.
And protection.
But maybe that's just me being off my meds again. Let's look at a more practical and, well, quite frankly, sane example. I love the incorporation of real-world ambient sounds that Mark uses. For example, in the track Metallic Monks, you can hear real audio samples of Morse code and the sounds of distorted radio communications. And while we can take this literally and imagine these are noises that can be heard in the Brotherhood bunker, for one, how do you explain the siren? And two, I think that's a reductive way of looking at a story that has elements of an allegory and fable, much like the series of movies that inspired it. I see a double meaning to these sounds, or I guess I hear a double meaning. To me, these sounds are echoes of a long forgotten society, 84 years in the grave. As ancient and unknowable as the 1940s would be to us now if we didn't have extensive historical records, music, and videos of that time period. Much like echoes, the source of these sounds are in another time than the actual sounds themselves. Yet we still remember their meaning. I think this is especially pertinent to the Brotherhood, since who are the Brotherhood of Steel if not a highly sophisticated cult of grave robbers? They salvage, or some would say desecrate, the ancient tombs of the old world and hoard it to themselves. Even the technology speaks from beyond the grave of this world. And sometimes these echoes sound like a familiar tune.
For if the bomb that drops on you gets your friends and neighbors too, there'll be nobody left behind to grieve, and we will all go together when we go. What a comforting fact that is to know. Universal bereavement and inspiring achievement. Yes, we all will go together when we go.
Music of the 1950s, such as crooner, ballroom ballads, and such, are nostalgic in a unique way. These genres are a very romanticized, idealistic style of music, like a haunting, faded memory. They communicate the emotions and experiences of the people in its time in a way that not a lot of music can do. And since that time is long past, the music carries their ghosts in such a haunting way. Think of The Shining. Think of The Caretaker. Seriously, even just taken on its own out of the horror context, I can't be the only one creeped out by this era of music. Don't get me wrong, I adore this style of music, but many tracks have a haunted feeling to them I find difficult to articulate. Using this era of music to contrast any dark or violent act has become a tired cliche, one that the modern Fallouts have unfortunately conformed to in their misunderstanding of what made this music fitting to this setting in the first place. Thus, the 1950s music in Fallout is the ghost of the old world. And the old world is long dead.
Maybe you'll ask me to come back again. Maybe I'll say maybe.
The pre-war society of Fallout is largely a mystery in the first game. We really only get glimpses of it through the intro and other clues from the vaults. And actually, can we talk about this intro for a second? I'm not sure if Tim has made a video on who created this intro and the ideas they had for it, but my god, I love this thing. The fact this gruesome footage of a literal war crime taking place is just so casually broadcasted to the homes of American families is unsettling. I love that it was broadcasted, not only uncensored, but the act is fully endorsed in a propagandist manner. I wonder how the other soldier felt about his associate's actions. Hey kids, want to see something fun? Today we're going to learn about POWs and why they're no more valuable than those filthy red buy war bonds. And a beautiful car for the missus. The old world is a capitalist dystopia. dramatizing the real-world arms race, supplemented by competitive consumerism between the US and Russia during the Cold War. Whose way of life is superior? The Soviet way of life? Or the white picket fence life of America? Neither were real. Both were idealized lies meant to fund a war. The intro to Fallout shows this consumer dystopia burned to ashes. The material things of this world crumbled like sand in the carcass of the society who held their image and status so deeply. An allegorical juxtaposition. Another part of this intro that I love, that I never hear anyone talk about, is exactly how this broadcast is playing despite the city being utterly destroyed and presumably without power. Well, if you've been paying attention and not using my video to fall asleep, wake up. Wake up. Wake up. Subscribe. Die. Subscribe. Die. Then you probably know why the TV is playing without any power. It's an echo. A ghost. Again, Fallout, much like its predecessor, can be much more interesting when you don't take it so literally. And we see that explored more in subsequent games in some pretty interesting ways. And oh, come on, they didn't understand that either? Okay, when Fallout 4 was first announced, I was actually pretty excited to see the dystopian pre-war America alluded to across the games. I have dreams of exploring the Metropolis-inspired city of the Fallout 1 intro with its eerie Art Deco architecture and the uncanny juxtaposition between its almost mannequin-like image it portrays itself with and the brutal reality of its ideology. But no, what dares curse my eyes on November 10th, 2015? A joke.
Being prepared for the future.
Thanks again.
Apparently the propaganda and consumerist lifestyle we see in Fallout 1, 2, New Vegas, and 3 were actually not propaganda and consumerism brainwashing at all. That's just how the middle class actually lived back then, and everyone acts like a cliche automaton of a person from the 1950s. And not even in the cool, uncanny way we see in Lynch's Blue Velvet. No, it's a joke. I swear, man. Fallout 4's intro, when you click around on the different items in the fridge and kitchen, felt like a literal ad I was playing through.
Sugar bombs. 100% daily value of sugar.
Like seriously, what's the difference between Fallout 4's depiction of pre-war America and the ads they made for Fallout 3, which, like the ads and propaganda of Fallout 1, are meant to be a juxtaposition between the idealized illusion of American consumer society and the brutal reality that is facing the human race. In Fallout 4, we don't get the brutal reality. All we are left with is this awkward depiction of 50s stereotypes. As sloppy as the idea is that Nate and/or Nora was a synth the entire time, at this point I'd rather take that reality, because then at least I can tell myself that the joke of a pre-war America was just the way an AI would interpret and generate this reality. At least then I could sleep at night knowing the fundamental core of Fallout's horror was intact. And you know what?
Curse you! God! I hereby vow you will rue this day. Solid funds. You might be foul dragon, but I will riddle with holes your rotten hide with a hair of harpoons, with every last drop of my being.
Alright, enough of Fallout 4. My point is, the old world is mysterious and haunting in the original. It is a ghost of a long-dead society that still echoes its death rattle through the sounds of its desolate technology and through the music of its culture. The old world is dead, and those who remain are left to try and shape the ashes. Despite my grievances with the Fallout show, I did like the idea behind this line.
Everyone wants to save the world, they just disagree on how.
What do we do with the ashes of this world? If nobody can agree on what this new fertile world should be shaped into, perhaps what we need is unity.
Do you join the unity, or do you die here?
Join.
Die!
Mutants are best equipped to deal with the world today.
The The super mutant threat and the Master are probably the most obvious part of Fallout's horror roots, and while countless videos have described the lore and background of the mutants and the FEV virus, totally recommend this one by the way, for the focus of this video, I think it's more important to cover exactly how you uncover this ever-looming threat. One thing that Fallout communicates to you right off the bat is that the wasteland is cruel. The vault you live in knows very little of the outside world. The few expeditions into the wasteland that have been made have all been for naught, as the unfortunate souls who were sent out into the hellscape never returned, either dead or worse. Going out into the wasteland is a genuine threat and essentially seen as a death sentence. And as all things in the wasteland, your perfect pristine vault eventually begins to decay as you find out the water chip to your vault is broken. The vault only has 4 to 5 months of drinking water left, roughly 150 days before everyone you know is either driven out of the vault into what they understand to be certain death, or are faced to die of dehydration in their newly found tomb. And unfortunately for you, the fate of the vault lies in your hands. Now, while the game doesn't directly communicate this next idea, according to Tim Kaine, the original idea for this intro was that your character is not selected because of any merit, intelligence, or chance of success. You are chosen completely at random, and as he puts it,
straws are drawn, and you draw the short one.
If you've played the original Fallout or have seen someone attempt to play it and get their Gen Z brain fried, then you know the difficulty of the game reflects the cruelness of the wasteland. The wasteland doesn't give a mole rat's ass about your feelings. Oh, fancy yourself a hero of the town? You heard a man crying over some giant scorpions who brutally murdered his neighbors and dragged them off to their lair to devour them? No problem! You're the protagonist after all. Nothing can stop you.
Your bones are scraped clean by the desolate wind. Your vault will now surely die, as you have.
Oh, that's death. I not only died, I fully rotted away, joining the mass grave that is this wasteland. Honestly though, Ron Perlman's narration and poetic delivery here reminds me of this meme.
These ants are invading my home, so I gave them an Oreo with honey on it. Death, deception, prosaic doom.
To me, this grounded presentation of the wasteland, on top of the time limit you have to save your vault, raises the stakes exponentially and surrounds the game with this aura of authenticity and dread. The idea of depicting the creatures of the waste as legend and myths, almost like cryptids, is pure horror genius. For example, the Deathclaw got its name because most who have encountered them have never lived to describe what they are. Those who have lived only remember their claws and horrifying outline. They describe them like demons, and you later learn they haunt the inner city of the once urban Los Angeles, now known as the Boneyard. Wonder how it got that name. Even the ghouls are depicted with a mythical aura of horror surrounding them. Honestly, the degradation and the cartoonification of the ghouls throughout the series is its own can of worms I'm not going to get into in this video, but to show you the contrast, think of how the ghouls can be first introduced to the player in Fallout. In your quest to retrieve the water chip, you hear rumors that a mysterious city named Necropolis may have a water source and the solution to your current water chip dilemma. If a random rad scorpion cave in the wasteland proved to be your grave before, a city named Necropolis might as well be waving a sign that tells you, "Come here if you wanna die." Scarier even is this city of the dead was formerly known as Bakersfield. But you have a death wish, so you go to Necropolis and find the place littered with blood. Not a good sign, but maybe a good Samaritan can maybe point you in the right direction.
What is that? What the fuck is that? What is that, Private Pile?
Okay, this really is Bakersfield. The dead have risen from their graves and are seemingly hell-bent on devouring you alive. Now, you'll quickly discover that there are also passive ghouls in the area, and some that will even strike a conversation with you.
It better be a killer reason for standing in my shadow. Does next on the menu ring a bell for ya, Normie?
This sets up the great moral dilemma present in this area that I won't touch on in this video. But that introduction to the feral ghouls and necropolis exemplifies the way Fallout builds tension through rumor and myth, much like cryptids in horror storytelling, and the super mutants are no different. Throughout the game, you get small glimpses and rumors of these humanoid abominations kidnapping people for an unknown cause. And if you found Harold, the local chill homeless dude in the hub, then you may have also heard tale of a pre-war military base housing an unspeakable horror.
I was a trader. Did pretty good making a circuit between survivors. Lost a lot of good people, though. Gangers got 'em. Scavengers attacking the caravans, and mutant son of a dog if they weren't springing up like rabbits with a mission. We mounted an expedition. God, Richard Gray led a small group of us up there. Richard Gray was a doctor. A little older than me, and Fran was he smart. He found the source, some sort of old military base. We lost a lot of folks getting in there. We got pretty far inside. Wasn't a lot of us left by then. Gray, me, and a couple of others. Then, it was just me and Gray. We made it to some sort of central core, like a plant of some sort. That's when it happened. A robot crane crashed into us. Last I saw Gray, he was flying through the air and into some sort of acid bath. I was in bad shape and, well, I passed out. He never made it back here and, well, I couldn't face the wasteland again, so I never looked.
What Richard Gray and company unearthed that day was a long forgotten and sleeping horror. The Mariposa military base housed a curse within its decrepit walls that Richard would fall victim to.
I'm dying. I need to get this down before the pain overwhelms me. I can't believe that I was finally able to drag myself out of that vat. The slime did not affect me, but I nearly drowned. I don't know what happened to Harold. He was standing right next to me when the crane knocked me into the vat. He must have been killed, or he would have tried to help me. Francine is dead, killed by one of those robots. I have no idea how much time has passed. I was able to hack the computer to turn off the robots and record this, but now my mind is slipping away. There is much pain. The green slime that I was immersed in is the source of all the mutations we traced to here. My skin is starting to fester and peel. In other areas it is bubbling and is expelling a green mucus-like substance. Some days the pain is almost tolerable. I think I consumed one of the mutated things scurrying around here today. Before I knew what was happening, some sort of tendril had sprang from my stomach and covered the poor creature. As soon as it had sucked the rodent into my gut, I could actually feel its mind, I think. There is the very real possibility that I'm going slowly insane and can no longer differentiate between what is real and what is a hallucination. Maybe I'm still slowly dying in the vat, and I've imagined all this. Things are becoming more clear to me every day. This toxin has actually improved my mind. I feel that I can understand even the most complex philosophical questions simply and directly. It's as if all the layers of artifice have been stripped away. I wonder what would happen if I submerged an animal in the vats for a prolonged period of time. Would it gain awareness? The strangest thing is happening to the animals. They actually become smarter and more aware of their surroundings. I dipped a dog and a rat at the same time today, and they were fused together. It's not quite two creatures anymore, but it's more than one. Perhaps this is the future, a coming together of different creatures in some sort of harmonious unity. I no longer consume the different animals I create simply for sustenance. I have become the instrument through which unity will be achieved. The slime in the vats is a man-made virus called the Forced Evolutionary Virus. This information was acquired from my newly grown neural link with the base computer. The few wanderers that have found their way here have been a disappointment to me. They can't seem to mutate correctly. The best I've been able to create are some big and dumb mutants. Most can recall nothing from before I initiated them into the wondrous unity. I only feed on them for fuel now. Their minds are nothing to me. We are beginning to create an army dedicated to unifying the wonderful diversity of life. We will continue to grow and feed until we have brought peace and unity
to the entire wasteland.
The Master was born from the depravity and horrors of the old world. FEV serves as a curse of the old world, still infecting the wasteland with its corruption. Think of a pharaoh's curse that unleashes plagues upon the world after disturbing its tomb. When Richard's mind fused with the Mariposa military base's computers, the corrupted soul of the old world found new life in him. The horrifying work that was started by the American military continued through the Master. The curse of a long-dead civilization is unearthed and unleashed upon the land. And this scourge has very real consequences. I mean, look at these things! Straight out of Carpenter's The Thing! But there's one mutant that stands above the rest.
Mutants are best equipped to deal with the world today.
Who else?
The ghouls?
Please.
Normals?
They brought nuclear death to us all. This will be the age of mutants.
The Master has characteristics of a cosmic horror villain, a false god. I mean, he has a cult surrounding him. The cult members have to wear protective equipment, otherwise their minds would melt when looking at him. And he resides deeply below a cathedral in an old world tomb. I mean, vault. How much more gothic horror can you get? The journey to the Master is quite frankly horrifying. Under the gothic cathedral, you discover the mutant hive, finding your way deeper and deeper. Canonically, you even lose companions in this dive into the heart of darkness. And, let's be honest, gameplay-wise, you probably lost them too.
Get back here, Shocker! Shocker! You can't escape me! I'll chase you to the ends of the earth!
But eventually you reach your destination, the Master's lair. Even just getting into the lair is terrifying. You see the tunnel leading into his lair gradually cease to be just a tunnel of the vault made of steel and concrete, but rather a tunnel made of flesh. As if the body of the old world has come back to life. Flesh and metal made into one. Your heart rate rises as you recognize the mass of flesh ahead. Human parts in the wall itself. The worst part is that it is moving, calling to you. You hear it calling your name. Darkness washes over your eyes for a moment, but you recover. You were hit for 8 hit points. You walk closer. You were hit for 14 hit points. I love this build-up. Straight up psychological and cosmic horror. The way the game describes the flesh moving and how it knows your name and is calling for you to join is just awesome. Not knowing the Master has psychic powers and is attacking your very mind in this moment makes the build-up feel otherworldly and supernatural. But even with the knowledge of the Master's powers, it's haunting to see how he enters the mind of his victims and psychologically tortures them in an attempt to get them to join his unity of flesh. But enough of the build-up. Let's confront the source himself.
So what shall it be? Do you join the unity, or do you die here?
Join.
Die.
Join.
Die.
Like all great villains, if you get past the horrifying appearance of the Master and sit down to actually listen to his philosophy and motive for his actions, you can kind of sympathize with him. Because ultimately, the Master has a virtuous goal. Peace in the wasteland. a chance to rebuild and avoid the mistakes of the past which are doomed to repeat themselves in the present. The Master sought to eliminate disparity. He believed our differences are what leads to eternal conflict. The Master believes in equity, guys, a true arbiter of progressive thought. There's much to love about the Master's presentation and character that would honestly require its own video. But what I want to focus on in regard to horror is the humanity of the Master. As we first get to speaking to the Master, I wouldn't blame you if you thought there was no humanity left in this thing at all. But notice the different voices the Master uses when speaking, and how they each embody different parts of the Master's personality.
They will be punished for their insolence.
From my understanding, there are 4 unique voices the Master uses. The first is the Master himself. To use Freudian terms, this would be the Master's ego. What remains of Richard Gray?
I understand now. You made a clever forgery. You made this up to fool me.
I believe this to be the case primarily because this is the default voice the Master uses to communicate with us, which tells me this is his default emotional and conscious state. The second voice is the wrathful side of the Master. To stick with the Freudian formula, this would be the Master's id, as it is often aggressive and exclusively speaks on the violent and authoritative intentions of the Master.
Those who deny this
opportunity
will be sterilized.
The third voice is the polar opposite, a female. She speaks with a presentation of empathy and compassion. She speaks when the Master details the positive aspects of his plan,
but under unity, control,
and protection.
The femininity representing the Master's virtuous intention to nurture and protect all in the wasteland like a loving mother.
Of course not. Most will be offered a chance to become a mutant.
And if you've been following along, you know where this is going. I think she represents the Master's morality, his super ego. But notice how the female voice sounds artificial, and not in the robotic sense, we'll get to that in a bit, but rather in a commercial sense. Doesn't she sound like she's reading an ad? Like one from the old world?
I can copy in black and white on ordinary paper.
Peace to the entire wasteland.
Oh my god, it's all connected. But in all seriousness, I think the delivery of these lines are purposefully made to sound like a commercial, because this is the ambassador side of the Master, his PR team if you will. She is trying to sell the idea of the unity to the player, and most likely did the heavy rhetorical lifting when recruiting the cult members the Master has under him. And finally, we have the fourth voice, the computer. The Master is fully man and machine at this point of his evolution, so all of his voices have an underlying digital quality to them. But this voice is probably where the technology he is fused with has the most influence.
Do you have proof? I must digest this information. One moment.
This voice computes ideas like a computer, void of emotions, strict calculations. This voice represents the Master's logic. In isolation, these voices are unsettling enough, but the way the Master switches on a dime between these voices, even repeating himself as if he's glitching out, just shows the true horror in his character, his humanity. The Master exemplifies human nature in all its contradictions and flippant ways. His plan is both compassionate and cruel, empathetic and authoritative, inclusive and racist? I don't know how he managed that one, honestly. It's great. He shows the horrors of humanity in all its might, its flaws, and eventually, its sorrow.
But it cannot be. This would mean that
all my work
has been for nothing. Everything that I've tried to a failure. It can't be.
At an earlier point in the game, you can find proof the Master's plan is doomed to fail. The depths of depravity this man has stooped to in the name of what he thought was righteous was all for nothing. The pain, suffering, and horror the mutant threat has caused is unlike any other the Wasteland has seen since the bombs. All from one man and what he thought was right. And you have to break the news to him.
I don't think that I can continue to have done the things I have done in the name of progress and healing. It was madness. I can see that now. Madness. There is no hope. Leave now. Leave while you still have
hope.
Seeing the Master lose all hope in rebuilding the wasteland and continuing on with life is uncomforting. I quite frankly think it's the cringiest shit ever when games let you convince the villain to kill themselves through a speech check with hardly any build-up, justification, or reason that fits the themes of the narrative in an interesting way.
And why would I do that, when I'm clearly the best hope for the people of the wasteland?
You serious?
Perhaps. Perhaps you're right.
I'm going to commit seppuku! Tell me some of them coming here!
But man, does it work here. The regret is palpable and haunting. Man, the voice actors absolutely killed it. But come on, what else should I have expected from the legend who voiced Winnie the Pooh? And Shocker? Okay, this man has range. Well, there's a ton more horror elements to Fallout 1, but this video has run long enough. But I bet you're wondering what your results are on that psych eval we did in the beginning of the video. Remember that? Well, I got some bad news, son. I'm sorry to say it looks like half of you are suffering from a delusional disorder. You're a fan of the wrong franchise. The foundation of Fallout's world is not obsessed with the 1950s aesthetic slapped onto a retro-futuristic post-apocalypse. The foundation lies within the horrors of the decaying carcass that is the wasteland and the ghost it holds. What do we do with its ashes so utterly stained by the corpses of millions? Are we doomed to repeat the mistakes of the dead?
Nah, I'm just gonna have sex with everyone in this garbage theme park and build a dollhouse to store them.
Listen, if you want to run around shooting radioactive creatures to the sound of silly 50s music, be my guest. But why do you need Fallout to do it? Bethesda might as well make a Waterworld game and it would come out nearly identical to modern Fallouts, just without the obsession of the 1950s. Is that really what separates Fallout from the post-apocalyptic generic slop? That it's obsessed with the 1950s coat of paint? Fallout has become replaceable as a piece of art. Many of Fallout's fans long for these grounded and serious roots the franchise had. Shut up you, I'll get to you eventually. But many Fallout fans don't want the serious roots the franchise used to have and would much rather have what the recent Fallouts offer. And so, the ever-great civil war of the fanbase continues. Because war never changes. So I hope that I've been able to shine a more focused light on the horror of Fallout 1, and by virtue of contrast, show how the series' latest entries have strayed far away from these horror roots. To those of you who made it this far, thank you for watching. If you're a horror fan or enjoy finding horror in unexpected places, please consider subscribing. Until next time, dear viewer, we'll see you in your dreams.
Mr. Sandman.